Good afternoon, all. This is Naveen, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined this webinar. Before we begin, I request all the participants to mute themselves because there may be some disturbance in the background, and unmute only during the Q&A session in case you have any questions. If you're unable to hear the audio or see the presentation, I request you to please write a comment in the chat section privately to Singapore Infotech. All right, so we're all set to begin now. Let me first give you a small intro of our company, Singapore Infotech. We are a Singapore headquartered company with offices in Bangalore, Pune in India, and also in Dubai. We develop tailor-made state-of-the-art software solutions and platforms for trading, trade finance, banking, and supply chain industries. Given the current economic and business climate and rapid technological advances, we aim to create revolutionary game-changing software platforms and solutions that enhance productivity, security, and easier collaborations to our customers. The objective of this webinar, Letter of Credit, Digitalization and Automation using Artificial Intelligence, is to address the current trends in digitalization in the fields of trade finance and bring out the challenges the industry faces in LC documentation, especially during this COVID situation, where we can see how the technologies like artificial intelligence can help us overcome these challenges. So basically, this webinar is divided into 3 sessions. In session 1, we have an industry veteran, Mr. R.V. Selvam from Singapore, who will be giving us an overview of the digitalization trends in trade finance. And in session 2, Mr. Suraj Ramesh from Singapore Infotech will speak on Trade Doc Prep, an AI-driven tool with OCR capabilities for auto documentation preparation and auto check for credit conformity. And in session 3, we will have question and answers. The presentation that we're going to show in this webinar can be shared with all of you. Please do let us know if you need it. Let me now first formally introduce our first speaker, Mr. Selvam. Mr. Selvam is a chemical engineer with a postgraduate diploma in management from the IIM Ahmedabad. He started his career as a management trainee with Reliance Industries Limited India and served the company till 2004 in various positions. During his tenure at Reliance, he was responsible for marketing of chemicals, corporate planning, new ventures, and aromatics trading. He held the position of Assistant Vice President in charge of aromatics trading before he left to found Southern Petro Products Pte Limited, a trading outfit headquartered in Singapore. Established in 2004, Southern Petro Products is a Singapore 1000 company dealing with commodity trading. Due to his varied experience in trading and his passion for technology, he can enlighten us about the latest technological advances and digitalization trends in the field of trade finance. So over to you, sir.
Thanks, Naveen. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Very good afternoon to everybody, for those who are in Asia. And good morning to people in the Middle East, if there is anyone from the Middle East. The topic we are going to cover today is digitalization trends in trade finance. It's a dreary topic, not an ideal one for a session just after lunch. Anyways, I'll try and hold your attention as much as possible. But before we begin this presentation, I'd like to ask the attendees a few simple questions. How many of you still submit your LC application by fax or by email as an attachment? I'm not sure if any attendee is involved in trade finance directly with the banks. Anyway, you don't need to answer these questions. It's a rhetorical question in any case. How many of you know the difference between digitizing and digitalizing? There is a big difference between digitizing and digitalizing. Some of the experts think it doesn't really matter, the difference between digitizing and digitalizing, but it does matter. How many of you have heard EUCP, which is Uniform Customs and Procedures, version 2, and EURC, which is Uniform Rules for Collections, version 1? This came in July 2019, if some of you are not aware. And lastly, how many of you have used EUCP to present e-documents? I'm not sure if any one of you has used even the EUCP version 1, which has been in the statutory books from 2003, if I'm not mistaken. If you've answered yes to all of the above questions or most of the above questions, that would indicate a very high trade finance digitalization index on your part and the part of your company. If not, then I suggest you pay more attention to this presentation and the subsequent presentations. Next slide, please. The topic we are covering today is, as I said, digitalization trends in trade finance. Given the importance of trade finance for trade and the economy, it is vital we monitor the trends in the industry as closely as possible. Let's look briefly at the past as to how the corporates and the industry in general were operating in trade finance in the past. The interactions with the banks were predominantly physical and manual. It used to be by phone, by fax, by post, and or by courier. Corporates would typically send an application for any instrument, whether it's letter of credit or supply chain finance, any of those trade finance solutions, either by fax, by post, or by courier. All this to avail a trade finance solution. Banks then responded, processed your request over the next 1 week. They typically used to take their own sweet time. Ultimately, the job was done after a few back and forth clarifications, only for you to notice that there are a few mistakes in the instrument that's eventually been issued. Then you go through another round of back and forth to get all those mistakes corrected. And then the corporates prepared all the documents manually or collected from third party for presentation and presented the documents to the bank. In some cases, this is the process even now, predominantly manual. Emails may have replaced fax. So you used to send fax in the past, now you probably send emails. Microsoft Word files may have replaced manual entries, but predominantly the process is still disjointed and manual, totally detached from the corporate's ERP systems. In most cases, it's a parallel exercise, detached from the internal ERP system. Thankfully, the industry has transitioned, well, a lot of them, if not all of them. Next slide, please. Else is increasing digitization, making life a little easier for the corporates. A recent ICC global survey has shown more than 60% of the global banks have either implemented or in the process of implementing technology solutions to digitize the trade finance offerings and even for their trade finance operations. Today, most of the global banks offer trade finance solutions online, which makes it convenient for the corporates to operate. That is why you wouldn't see your colleagues in trade finance dealing with the banks faxing or emailing trade finance applications. They would most probably use bank's internet online system. It may not be the perfect solution that corporates want and need, but you have the basic framework on which additional solutions can be built to further improve efficiency. Of course, these improvements will always be incremental and they don't fundamentally change or alter the landscape as to how corporates operate. The paradigm shift has never been achieved by indulging in incrementalism. Frankly, these changes cannot be termed digitalization. At best, they can be termed digitization and operational efficiency improvers, which is also important. From our experience, we know that it is inevitable that traditional trade instruments will over time inexorably move towards a mixed ecosystem of paper and digital, and ultimately in years to come, maybe 5 years down the line, to electronic records alone. So the corporates need to be prepared for it. So what does the industry need to do or focus on in order to make a paradigm shift in approach even possible? There are a few things that the industry needs to take care in order to make digital progress in trade finance, especially in existing solutions or instruments like letters of credit. Like safeguarding applicability and guarantee relevance in constantly evolving digital world of the existing trade finance instruments, say letters of credit, for example. Extending the mitigation of risk from a paper environment to the electronic mode, explicitly and unambiguously supporting the usage of electronic records, shared understanding of terminologies and objectives, leaving no doubts open to interpretation, confidence in a set of independent and trusted contractual rules, uniformity, consistency, and standardizations in customs and practice, uniform rules for digital trade transactions, a high-level framework outlining obligations, rules, and standards for the digitalization of trade finance. Despite these huge advantages in its adoption, digitalized trade finance constraints to wider adoption due to reluctance from industry players and the desire to stick to established processes, even if they are outdated. So there are challenges to digitalization. Next. So what are the challenges to digitalization? First and foremost is the e-compatibility of ICC rules. So you have UCP 600 and URC 522. The second one is for collections and the first one is for letters of credit. They are invaluable tools in a paper world, but they do not offer much protection in digital or electronic transactions. ICC is making all the efforts to make it easier and convenient to go digital. ICC has just released EUCP version 2 and URC version 1, as I mentioned before, in July 2019, as late as that. It's a determined push towards a digital future. The second challenge is the fintech adoption in the ecosystem, and this is a big challenge. More players adopt, more is the benefit that accrues for everyone. People always wait for the other one to adopt so they can adopt later. It should be the other way around. So the third and another important challenge is the laws and legal framework for use of data and electronic documents. So MLETR is being developed as we speak by the United Nations group on trade, and that will go a long way in allaying all these fears. The last challenge, but not the least, is the commercial consideration. A lot of the companies, they want to see benefit first before spending, and that seems to be the approach, and that needs to change. So what does the digital future look like? So it looks something like this. Currently, if not currently, very soon, the digitized flow of trade information makes sure that no more paper or fax or email gets exchanged between the corporates and the banks. So usually corporates log on to the bank's internet and submit all the applications for any trade finance solution. Seamless flow of data is happening between banks and corporates, especially the most important fields in trade finance solutions. There is still legal uncertainty with acceptance of digital trade documents. I won't be surprised if all of you tell me you've never submitted or used EUCP before. There is no standardized wording and formatting, but all this is getting tackled. ICC is taking all this seriously and making progress. So therefore, what do we see in 3 to 5 years? That is the future. We see digitalized flow of trade information and automated cargo clearance based on electronic documents. That's not happening now, but it's likely to happen in the near future, say 3 to 5 years. Electronic data flow, it just not only from the corporates to the bank, all the way through the supply chain, including third-party service providers and government agencies. We foresee universal handling and acceptance of electronic documents in the near future. Connected technology platforms, very verifiable goods, and no digital or data islands, because everyone is sort of connected. One way or another, this digital future is upon us. It's going to arrive sooner or later. So how should we prepare as corporates for such an eventuality? Well, to begin with, one should have a cross-functional team to monitor developments in this industry and area, and trends in trade finance digitalization. Slowly but surely digitize and digitalize all internal processes. There are lots of internal processes within corporates presently which are not digitalized. And corporates don't see a need to do that because they still do not foresee the digital future. But it's time that the teams foresaw and took action. Have a robust system for auto generation of letter of credit application. It shouldn't be manual. It shouldn't be repetition. Somebody is sitting all the time and doing this. It should be auto generated with all the advantages of a digitalized system managing all data. Use artificial intelligence based systems. They are available in the markets to read and digitalize MT700 series messages, either from the bank or from the counterparty. Have a system driven process for generation of documents, auto generation of documentary instructions, which can be sent to the third party, as compared to manually preparing these documents. Integrate all your internal systems. We've spoken about it before. Adopt innovative technology solutions. Don't wait for others to adopt so you can adopt later. That will help you in digitalization. At the end, stay agile and stay proactive so you will be ready when change happens in the ecosystem, or you will be left behind and become outdated, which is not what we want. Points to ponder. ICC recognizes that the likely end of the evolution of electronic presentations is automated document generation, and equally importantly, automated compliance checking systems in the documentary credit field, LC field. It's all too apparent when looking at the evolving technology and digital trade finance technologies like distributed ledger, popularly known as blockchain, smart contracts, artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, etc. The future of trade finance is digital, and we can't run away from it. And that also is going to happen very soon. So the question then we need to ask ourselves is this: does your organization have a digitalization roadmap? How prepared are you for a digitalized trade finance ecosystem? And finally, check your corporate trade finance digitalization index. That needs to be high for any organization. That will give you an idea. Where do you stand on the digitalization curve? With that, I come to the end of this presentation. If you guys have any question, I'll be more than happy to answer. Hello?
If any of you have any questions, please unmute yourself so you will be able to ask your question.
Uh, yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mahavir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes, please.
See, uh, I have transferable LC. Okay, I received the transferable LC from India.
Okay.
From Bank X. Okay. Now, in the transferable LC, they have mentioned that this is having the UJANs of 180 days. Okay. Now, I need to get the supply from Hong Kong. Okay. Now, my Hong Kong supplier is asking the UJANs period of 60 days. Now, I'm requesting my bank. That please transfer the LC to my Hong Kong supplier.
Right.
But here, the banker is asking that it's not possible under the transferable LC, Article 38 of UCP 600.
Okay.
So can you tell me any way out? Because the transferable LC in my hand, and I need to transfer this LC to my supplier,
Right.
but that is of 60 days instead of the 180 days. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, no, unfortunately, I don't know what your arrangement with your bank is. If this transferable LC, are they prepared to confirm it?
No, see, they will not confirm because the banker is just, they have received, I maintain the current account with them, you know, they told me that if they need to issue the transferable LC of the 180 days to your Hong Kong supplier, very well they can issue. They don't deny.
Yes. Yeah.
But as we are asking and requesting to the banker of the 60 days UJANs now,
Right.
so then they told no, under Article 30 of the UCP, of UCP 600, it's not allowed because we cannot change the UJANs period.
That is correct. That is correct. They'll not be able to transfer a LC with different conditions. So what they can do is, if you have lines, if you have line with that bank.
No, we don't have line because we just maintain the current account.
So that is the problem. Anyway, we'll take this offline so we can have this discussion, because I think others may not be interested in the solution to this problem. If you have any questions with regard to the presentation itself, I'll be more than happy to answer this specific question with respect to your situation on UCP 600. We can take this offline so we don't end up wasting other people's time.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, anyone else? Any question with respect to this presentation?
Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, we will move on to the next session.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Selvam, for a very informative presentation. It is very clear that the trade finance industry is moving very fast on the technology path, and it's time for the corporates to adapt the latest technologies to make sure that they're not left behind. So now I would like to call upon Mr. Suraj Ramesh from Singapore Infotech to introduce Trade Doc Prep, an AI-driven tool with OCR capabilities for auto document preparation and auto check for credit conformity. Over to you, Mr. Suraj.
Thank you, Naveen, for the introduction. Okay, Trade Doc Prep actually stands for Trade Document Preparation. As Naveen mentioned, it's an artificial intelligence-based tool, and it is integrated with Swift. Now, okay, what can we do using Trade FinOps on the import side? So if you're an importer, you can begin using the system in three ways. The first one is you can create your import deal or your purchase deal on the system. That's step one. Or if you're already using another system, it could be SAP or Oracle or any other ERP, you can continue to use that system and upload the import contract document on the system. So the system will pick up all the information from the uploaded document. Or the last option is you can receive the import deal data directly using EDI, which is electronic data interchange. So our system, the Trade Doc Prep system, can be connected to any of your existing ERP. So the information can automatically be pulled from there. So nothing has to be done manually. All right. So once the system has the import information, it auto generates the LC application if it's LC based, or documentary instructions using the data from your import deal or contract. Right. So here again, there is no human intervention, and we can customize different formats for different banks. So all of that is taken care of. So once the LC application is ready, you can send it to the issuing bank. If the bank accepts electronic submission, you can do that, or continue to submit manually, whichever way. Now, once the LC is issued from the bank, you typically get a PDF file from the bank, the MT700 file. All that you have to do is upload that on the system, right? So the system will automatically parse and understand all the conditions of the LC using artificial intelligence and OCR. OCR stands for optical character recognition, which is used to read scanned documents. So the system understands what exactly the LC says, right? And once you receive the documents from the exporter, you just have to upload them again, and the system will automatically check for credit conformity. So it's going to tell you that the documents that you have received is conforming to the LC or not. So again, very little human involvement. Now this is on the import side. Now let's move on to the export side. On the export side, again, you begin by creating the export deal or uploading your contract, or the system can receive it using EDI from your existing system. So here again, once you get a copy of the LC, either from your bank or from your counterparty, you just have to upload. The system will again read and understand all the conditions of the export LC, and it's going to store all that information. Now, using this information, the system auto-generates discrepancy-free documents. Now, for example, we have seen many mistakes that tend to happen with documentation. Let's say the LC says that LC number has to be mentioned on the invoice, and somebody may forget to mention that number. Worst case scenario, or if somebody is mentioning that number, there may be a typo error. And we have seen so many cases where the address, instead of number 57, let's say they put hash 57, and it comes back as a discrepancy, right? So when the system does all of this, it makes sure that there are no such errors, which typically tend to happen when a human being is doing it. And these are for internal documents, the document which as a corporate you would be generating. Now, coming to third-party documents like bill of lading or certificate of origin, survey documents, which are generated by third parties, the system has three ways you can handle this. One is you can send instructions, documentary instructions. The system automatically prepares these instructions based on the letter of credit. You can then send it to the shipping company or the third party, right? That is option one. Option two is you yourself can prepare a sample format of the document. So the system auto generates the BL template or the certificate of origin template, which you can straight away send to the third party. They just have to print, sign, seal, and give it back to you. So there is no way that a mistake can happen, right? Or the last method that you could use is give access of this system to the third party, right? So they just come into the system, log into the system, everything is readily available, and then they just straight away proceed to generate the document. So using this, as a corporate, you are still having full control of even the third party documents, right? And once you get a copy of these third party documents, you just have to upload them, and the system will, again, just to be double sure, verify these documents for conformity. So then once you have all the documents in place, you can present it to the bank or importer. Again, if electronic presentation is allowed, you can do that or do it manually. Okay, now TradeDoc Prep has a very interesting tool called a comparison engine. Now what does this do is, it allows you to compare any two documents, right? So let's say on the import side, you can compare your LC application with your import contract to make sure that the application that you're filing to the bank is as per your import contract. And once you have the LC, either the draft or original, you can compare that with the application or your contract to make sure that the bank has not made any mistake in issuing the LC, right? Then you can compare documents received versus LC. So in each of these comparison, the system will point out even the minutest of error, even if there is a comma missing, a full stop, an hash, whatever the differences are, it's going to highlight and show you. Then as a user, you can decide whether to accept this or ask for a change. On the export side, again, you can compare the LC received versus your sales contract to decide whether you need to ask for an amendment. And if you need to, the system will again prepare the list of amendments that that you need to request for. And you can compare third-party documents versus LC conditions, as I discussed. And if you're a typical trading company, for typical trading companies where they do both import, export back to back, the system compares the import LC versus export LC and immediately highlights and tells you where the differences are. So you exactly know, what's on your import side and what is on your export side. Okay, moving on to the salient features of the trade doc prep application. First one is document validation. As I said, every document that you generate, be it internal or instructions, is coming from the base source, which is your contract or the letter of credit. And you can also generate password protected documents and maintain shipment wise folders. Authorization, the admin has control to decide who has access to what, who can edit documents, all the controls are available. Swift integration, as we said before, so it's connected to Swift, so it understands all the MT7 series documents, so it knows what these documents say. OCR stands for optical character recognition. This is a tool that is used to read from scanned documents. So, typically sometimes you may receive a scanned copy of the LC or a scanned copy of the bill of lading, right? So you just have to upload the scanned document. The system does OCR and reads information from there. I mean, most of you would have used this. You may be having an app on your phone to scan visiting cards, and it's going to convert that into a contact. So that is again an example of OCR, right? The system not only reads what is there in these scanned documents, it also converts all the information into a digital system understandable format. And that is where digitalization comes into picture. So all your data is digitalized, including operational data, which currently the ERP or other systems are not capturing. For example, the date of expiry of the LC, latest date of shipment. So all of this is not being captured in a lot of ERPs. It's being tracked manually. Even large companies maintain Excel sheets to track all this information. So using a system like Trade Doc Prep, all of this gets converted into a digital format. And machine learning is again an auto learning process where as and when you process multiple letter of credits, the system automatically learns. So the efficiency improves as and when you use the system. Integration, as I said before, it can be connected on a two-way basis with any of your existing system. So there's no need to do duplicate entry of data. And digital security, if you're worried about security, I can simply say that it's as safe as doing any banking transaction. It's all secure and data is encrypted. Alerts and reports are very important features. So the user can configure any alert based on dates or expiry or any event. So system is going to give you those alerts by email or on the system. And you can pull out any kind of analytics, reports, you can do tracking. For example, if you want to see for how many letter of credits did we present the documents on time and for how many we did not, that is something which you can get from the system. Okay, TradeDoc Prep as an application can be hosted either on a public or private cloud, and it can be accessed from any location using security protocols. So it's very relevant during these COVID times because TradeDoc Preps makes it very easy and convenient for users and companies to manage trade documents. So most of us, even now, probably are working from home. So systems like this make it easier. So there is no need for even the documentation personnel to be there physically in the office. Everything can be managed online. Okay, what we have here, what you can see on your screen now is the current workflow. When I say current workflow, workflow where companies are doing it manually and not much is automized. So from our experience, we have taken this from multiple corporates, small to large corporates, and they tell us that to process the complete documentation for a letter of credit, they take about 20 to 24 hours. So on average, you can say 20 to 22 hours is what it takes for you to process the complete set of documents for an LC, right? Now, if you use a system like Trade Doc Prep, it straight away comes down to 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. Now, why is that? That's because a lot of manual tasks is done by the system. Now, a simple example, once you get the LC, somebody is manually checking each line in the LC to make sure that everything is okay. Once you get documents, somebody again is manually checking whether it's as per LC or not. The internal documents, be it invoice, packing list, all of that is manually being prepared. Somebody is having LC on one side, checking what the LC wants, and then preparing these documents, which is of course very time consuming and prone to error. So this system is going to automate all the manual processes, thereby saving a lot of time. Now, not only time, now if you see purely in terms of manpower saving, you can achieve a cost saving of up to 70% and a time saving of up to 80%. Now, here I am talking only in terms of manpower. I'm not getting into the cost savings on amendments or the bank fee, the cost that you have to incur due to mistakes that happen. So, we are not getting into all that. So, if you take only the manpower cost saving, if you have an average of 100 shipments a month, you can achieve an annual cost savings of $500,000. And that's a big number. So what really are the benefits? Just to sum it up, you can redeploy manpower to other value added tasks. We still see that companies have a large team who's just sitting and preparing documents and checking LCs. So that you can redeploy them to other value added tasks. Increased availability of data for reporting and analytics. As I said, every single data gets digitalized. So you can pull out any kind of reports or analytics that you want. Hassle-free documentation process gets automated and simplified. Lower overhead costs, reduced turnaround time, because as I said, it's going to reduce from 20 hours to 4 or 5 hours. Zero errors, because once you tell the system what it has to do, it will do it accurately. There's no chance of an error. Always on-time presentation of documents to the bank, because system is doing most of the tasks. And because of on-time presentation, you have reliable and on-time payments, which is very crucial for any company to operate in this trading business. Right. So yeah, that was the presentation on Trade Doc Prep.